what are some beginner tips to get into headstand? Top 3. Top 3 beginner tips: take your time, move slowly, okay, and really engage your core. So I gave you 2 variations of headstand today, the tripod headstand, right, and classic headstand. Everybody's shaped super differently, so one will come easier to you than the other. So play with both to figure that out. So those would be my top 3. Origins of your sequencing. So I was fortunate enough, I grew up in New York City, and it's a hotbed for vinyasa yoga, and so I started at Jivamukti, which has a set series, but I learned a lot from my teacher, Shiva Ray. So a lot of what I do is what she calls wave theory, but I also studied a lot at a studio called Laughing Lotus, and they have their own very unique style of sequencing. And what would I say? A little bit of Iyengar mixed in there, a little bit of forest yoga. I kind of blend a lot of things together to create the sequences. Sequencing is probably one of my favorite things to talk about. And watch out, at some point, I just need to get organized on it, I'm going to lead a 4-day sequencing workshop online. And so hopefully we're going to do that this summer. So I will try to get better about organizing it, and I will post it, I hope, and by the end of this month. Yeah? Steph, hold me to it, okay? Next question. Suggestions for people who don't like going upside down. Okay, so suggestions in terms of things to do instead of going upside down would be like the Viparita Karani, bum to the wall, legs up to wall, block under bum. Doing downward dog is an inversion. You can do downward dog, right? The other part of this, and this is just going to be a little bit of a poke for people who don't like going upside down, is to go into the question of why you don't like going upside down. Like, what does it bring up? Is it a fear thing? Is it a discomfort thing? Is it a structural thing? And taking the opportunity when we're in the discomfort of like, oh, I don't want to do this pose, of why don't I want to do this pose? And not to say you should do the pose, but more like, what is holding me back, right? And sometimes what's holding me back is safety, or structurally, like you're like, my body doesn't move that way, then no problem. But if it is an emotional component, explore that. That's a little poke. Yeah? How long did it take you to learn how to get into headstand, handstand, forearm stand? Okay. Headstand, it took me 7 years. So there's no hurry. Headstand was the hardest one for me to come into because I was just so scared of breaking my neck, to be honest. So what I had to deal a lot with in my own practice was this idea of death, of mortality. Forearm stand came easier than handstand because the surface area is much greater. You're on your forearms and hands. And that took me probably like 5 or 6 years. Like, it took me a while. Inversions took a while. The other part of it is because structurally I am very, 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 very fluid, let's say, and flowy. So I had to work a lot at engaging my core and working my legs to be stronger so that I was able to kind of hold the inversions. Other classes on the site to practice inversions. Yes, so we have in the body focus class, we have in the body focus, playlist, you'll see one on inversions, and I go through all the inversions. And I like to do, there's a couple of different classes on each one because I give you a slightly different flow to get into it. Yeah. And then tips to start moving away from the wall. How do you move away from the wall? Move away from the wall. I know it sounds that obvious, but like specifically with headstand, if you can help it, I'd prefer that. I generally tell people not to do headstand against the wall because people have a false sense of confidence, and they tend to kick into headstand. And when you do that, your poor little neck can eat the movement of the legs, which I'm not into. So with handstand and forearm stand, move to the center of your mat, or depending upon how tall you are, to a point where you can lightly touch the wall with your foot, but not much closer than that. And the idea, if you can help it again, one thing that I would recommend, especially for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere that are coming into summer, grass and beach are great places to explore doing inversions because the ground is generally softer.